So I asked my uncle the question, who is in fact an economist. And I asked him the question, well, how about this economy? And he said, every government asks itself the purpose, how can we keep the economy growing? Economic growth must every year increase. That's what my uncle said. But he says, this is a matter that I raise grave doubt. He says, because how is this possible? He says, manpower is limited. Resources are limited. Production capacity is limited. While economic growth is only a number, is a percentage. And in the end, people will be satisfied because there's only an amount that you can buy. There's only an amount of what you can use. So economic growth is in theory infinite, but in reality it's not infinite. That's what he says. So he's very skeptical about this idea that is unquestioned. This unquestioned idea of economic growth that prevails within every political system. Unless you have some sort of tribal system. But he says, I have doubts about this. Yes, he says, I have doubts about the possibility of infinite economic growth. So I started to develop some interest in this question as well. And what I found out is that an old law, it's all the way back from the first banks. The Bank of England was the first bank that said, when banks lend money, they only have to owe 10% of the money. Yes? So how do government creates money out of nothing, you see. This is not possible, because resources and manpower are limited and finite. But economic growth is only a number in a computer screen that can be typed in with the touch of a button, and they type in, well, voila, a rent of $1,000 or $1 million. And this is how the banks sustain themselves and how the government sustains itself. Because how else could the government afford all these expensive bureaucrats and officials and do all their projects? Well, they need money for it. And the banks generate this money. And this is done by a trick. Because if I give the bank $1, the bank may say, okay, you have $1, but we may rent out 10 times as much money as we have in fact in stock. Yes, because they found out that it never happens that all people at the same time collect their money from the bank. Yeah, they found that out. They found that it never occurs that all people take their money from the bank at the same time. So that the bank can rent out more money than it has, because it never happens that everyone comes to collect it at the same time. So the bank is only obliged by law to have 10% of what they loan out, rent out to people. 10% they only need to have. So what happens is, if I give $1 to Bank A, then Bank A can lend $100 to Bank B. Yes, and this is possible because, as common sense defying as it is, you're only supposed to say, okay, I promise to pay it back. Yes, you don't even have to own the money. You don't have to own the capital. If you promise the bank that you will pay him $10, if you promise to pay him your house, if you promise to pay him the land that you own, then it already counts as capital. So, as soon as I promise the bank, I will give you $10, but I don't have it, but I will give you it, I promise, and I sign this with my autograph, then it's valid, then it is capital, and then it is capital that the bank can use. So, there you have it. I can, by giving my promise as leverage, the promise to pay, I can accept a loan. Yeah. So if I promise the bank, okay, if I can't pay it, you may have my car. I don't have the car yet, but I'll buy it if you give me money to buy it. It's simple as that. That you can do that. It sounds retarded, but it's really true. I'm not making this up. And it all goes back to an old law that comes back from the first Bank of England. So it's really that simple. If you say to the bank, okay, I'm going to buy a car, but I don't have the money yet. So please give me the money. And the bank asks, okay, but what do you offer in return? The guy says, okay, I'll give you the car as a leverage. I don't have it yet, but I promise that I'll buy it from the money. Then it's all right. Because the promise is the capital. Yes, you only have to promise it. And they found out that it never happens that everyone at the same time comes to the bank and take their coin out of the bank. They found out by experience that that never happens. So, even if of these 100 people, maybe 10 don't pay off the car and they go bankrupt and they lose some money off it, it's okay, because there's always 90 others who do pay up and who do pay up the mortgage. So therefore, by experience, they learned that it is sufficient to only have the promise as leverage. Okay, so what happens as a result? If I give $1, £1, or €1 to Bank A, as a result, Bank A may lend €100, £100, or $100 to Bank B. Yes? Bank B may then do the same to Bank C, but then times 1,000. And then you see that Bank C can lend $1,000 to Bank A. Yes, if I give $1 to Bank A is allowed to give $100 to Bank B, and Bank B is allowed to give $1,000 back to Bank A, because they all back each other up with a promise. And the law said that it's only a promise. So you see that in a computer, in a digital screen, all this money can grow infinitely by just putting another zero after the number that you already typed in. But in reality, this money does not even exist. Yes? All that exists is that single dollar that I gave to the bank. So you see that the economy can grow infinitely in numbers, in digits. In theory, it can grow infinitely. But in reality, natural resources and manpower and time and all is limited, yes? Can only cut down so many trees or drill up so much oil, because at some point it's gone. Whereas the systems of loans and rents can go infinitely. Now, how does this all connect? How does this all connect? Everything you've told us so far about logical positivism and utopia and Karl Popper and Leo Strauss and whatever the hell you told us, how does it all connect? It's very reasonable to ask that right now. And I'll answer it. As a conclusion of this lecture, I'll answer it. Because with the fall of the iSave Iceland Bank, the DSB Bank, and whatever the hell kind of banks all went bankrupt, people only said, whoa, there are some money grubbers at the top. There's some officials who have too high wages for themselves. Okay, that's all true. It's all true that it's unfair that these people earn too much money and that they abuse the money of the hardworking saver for their own. But the point is that that's only 1% of the problem, and the other 99% of the problem is the unfairness of the system itself, because it is impossible. As you see, so they think, oh, social engineering, step by step, trial and error, piecemeal, problem in the here and now is money grubbing, top ranking officials. And we have to take those out. Okay, fine, public is satisfied, because all attention is towards those money grubbers at the top. But on the long run, in the distant future, there's a big problem in here. In the distant future, the problem is the idea that you can create more money than there is resources. Yes? Because you only have to possess 10% of it. Yes? The rest is all theory. So, the problem is that if enough people go bankrupt, then all these people are forced to sell the car and their houses and everything to the government that they had as leverage. And to the banks, they have to sell the car. But it turns out that the car is not worth the $1,000 that they said it was worth, but then it turns out that the car only grants them, let's say, $800 instead of the $1,000. But the bank says, okay, fine, we make some loss on this, but that's okay, because there's another 100 who do pay their things with the right price. But then it turns out that all of these possessions, the people are not willing to pay for the original price of these things, so they cannot even sell them. So everything they confiscate is sold as a lower price, and that's how money can evaporate, yes? That's how billions of dollars can evaporate. Because all these billions of dollars are just amounts typed into computer screens, and they were not coin cash dollars laying in a vault somewhere, yes? And that's how money can evaporate. And it turns out that as governments grow towards economic progress, that the amount of resources that they can harvest, that they can consume and produce and manufacture, that is finite too. Because at some point all the plastic will be burned up, for example, while as the economy can grow infinitely. Think about if all people in the world adapt to Western living standards. If every Chinese or Indian person starts to live the way we do, with refrigerators and mansions or whatever the hell we have, well, that's impossible, yes? You see, it's impossible. It's downright impossible. It's really that simple.